Hello, and welcome to episode 13 of Trails in the Pod. I'm Colin. That's Kevin.
Podcast like cuteness or justice. And if you want to be a just person, if you want to be a good person, listen to this podcast. Review us 5 stars, only stars acceptable. Spread the word. Otherwise, Anelace is going to come looking for you as we get into Trails in the Sky SC Prologue.
Kevin, I never know how you're going to open these episodes. We don't pre-screen these. I just sit here and I wait for you to say shit. And I gotta say, you've outdone yourself this time.
Thank you. And not only have I outdone myself, our listeners, you have outdone yourselves with the answers to our previous question of the week about sequels. What makes a good sequel? What makes a bad sequel? What do you like? What do you dislike? First, we have our stalwart regular Kate, who has, what makes a good sequel? Obviously, it depends. Sometimes it's evolutionary, taking what made the first one good and improving on it on the base. Resident Evil 2, case in point. Sometimes you want a revolutionary sequel, like Resident Evil 4. It's an ambitious franchise, which is good and bad. And what really matters to her is we talked about this the end of FC. What do the devs want to do? What's their vision? And are they successful at it? And that's a really good question to ask before, is the vision good or bad?
I would agree with that. What her response reminds me of as well, I haven't really played Resident Evil that much, but it does remind me a lot of the evolution of the Legend of Zelda series, specifically from Legend of Zelda 1 to Legend of Zelda Link to the Past, skipping over Zelda 2, and then into Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time is like a revolutionary game solely in historical circumstances. If you go back and play it now, it's good, it's enjoyable, but it's not like, oh my God, this is amazing. I would say Link to the Past is more timeless. But in terms of by turning it into 3D, it did revolutionize how you aim, how you explore, how you interact with the world. That has then become a really important cornerstone for the rest of gaming.
Colin, do you think Ocarina of Time is good, but not timeless because it made so many developments that it had that were revolutionary? It's normal or even passe to have them now, like how Seinfeld is unfunny.
Number one, Seinfeld is not unfunny. You shut your whore mouth. But second of all, I played Ocarina of Time for the first time pretty recently, like a year or two ago, like on the N64 on a CRT, as much original as I could do. And the reason why I say that it's good but not great is because of some design flaws it has with its late game dungeons and its pacing. I can completely agree that a lot of the stuff that is done has been adapted into other 3D action adventure games, but I don't think that that's what makes it not a masterpiece.
That makes sense.
So Chua, our good friend Chua, says, quote, exploring and diving into the undiscovered areas that was vaguely mentioned, returning characters, same old formula, but do it better. Quality of life and giving more screen time or shifting perspectives to others that was around. That's his idea of a good sequel, which basically means you take everything that you had done before, you make it better. You expand the lore. You make the quality of life better. You reiterate on the systems.
It's evolutionary, as Kate would call it.
As Kate would call it, absolutely.
And for me, on a personal level, within the direct series of a game, direct sequel, I tend to agree because I want more of what it was good. Like I want more of the characters, more of the world. And oftentimes, if you try to zag when you should have zigged, ambition can be a fatal flaw in a lot of games. Look at Spore.
Spore did fail. I remember being very, very excited for it as a kid and then being very disappointed once I bought it. But counterpoint to you, we often make fun of a sentence such as, if a good thing happens, then it was a good decision. If a bad thing happens, then it was a bad decision. But that is exactly the case here. There are games that are revolutionary being sequels that if they're good, then oh my God, this is a new direction for the series. Look at Breath of the Wild, for instance. But if it sucks, then nobody fucking wants it. Look at Paper Mario Superstar Saga, for instance. It's not because that they abandoned the core tenets that made the game good. It's because they abandoned them and did not replace it with something better.
All I'm saying is tautology is a good thing, Colin. Good games are good because they are good. And we know they're good because they're good. Bad games that are bad because they're bad.
For those who are unaware of Kevin's lingo, tautology means the same thing, saying the same thing.
Amelia has a comment that is really appropriate to Trails SC, second chapter. If it's a part 2, direct sequel like SC, it's very important the main characters continue the arcs. Most of the previous playable should have confirmed continued new stories. Expect some new characters, plot themes, but not too many. And I totally agree. If we did not pick up with Joshua and Estelle in SC1, I think the series would have crashed. We would not be doing a podcast on these games. But 2, it would have been so unfulfilling. What happened? What's their arc? What became of them? Sometimes this kind of, some questions are left unanswered. You don't get everything resolved nice and neat. That can be great. There are mysteries and adventures going on you will not find out the end of, and that's life. But for something as central as this, Joshua and Estelle, the society, if we need to focus on Estelle and Joshua in SE, that is a fact, I think. Colin, do you think this game had been successful without those two?
No, I mean, the game was initially developed as one game. And was divided into 2 in mid-development. No, the way that Trails FC sets it up is that you have to continue the story in SC. Trails the Third does take a different tack, and I think it's a great game because of it. So I don't want to blanketly say that sequels must continue with the same characters and yada yada. It depends on how the original games are, and I would say that Trails normally does a pretty good job at having strings of 2 games in a row starring the same. I have vented my dismay at how they use characters in Hajimari no Kiseki. That suggests to me that they cannot do a 3rd entry in a series, but 2, they're very good. They're much like Valve in that way.
Question, isn't Cold Steel, that's 4 games, isn't that about Ring and Company?
It is about Reen, yes. However, you can definitely take 1 and 2 as one arc and 3 and 4 as another arc. So let's finish up with Pork Bob. Xenosaga 2, he says, completely threw out the battle system in the first game and made one of the most frustrating systems he's ever played in a game series. He's using Xenosaga 2 as an example of a sequel. The art style shifted radically from anime-inspired to realistic, and fans didn't like that. It didn't help the game was short, and they changed a lot of the voice actors in English, at least. The side quests were annoying. The music was very different, but though not bad, he says. And he could keep listing flaws. On the other hand, Falcom to this day has not tried to throw out their battle system and slowly tweaked it each game to make it better and give it more flavor. They leaned into the strengths of what they knew they were doing, like the world building and political stuff. So on the one hand, you have Xenosaga 2, which tripped on its face and basically killed the series outright, although it would limp along for one more game for a semblance of closure. And then you have...
What a great description of the series. I'm sorry, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have a story about Xenosaga I'm going to tell in a second, but I'm looking at all the hundreds of dollars I spent on that series, and reading this, I'm now disappointed. But to finish off his tweet, and then you have Sky SC, which didn't make those same mistakes and knocked it out of the parks for fans, and has been able to continue telling the same story the way they wanted it to this day, unlike one of the main inspirations for the series, which I suppose he means either Xenosaga or Xenogears. I do disagree with him. CF Hajimari no Kiseki. I'm sorry. I'm really soured on that game. I have to say, I think it's not a good sequel in this series. But okay, Xenosaga. So I played Xenogears a few years ago. I thought it was pretty good. Not great. I kind of had an advantage because it talks a lot about Gnosticism, and as a late Hintique historian, I kind of am familiar with Neoplatonism and Gnosticism, and I felt like that was an unfair expectation for the player. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to play Xenosaga at some point. Let me go and grab the series from eBay. Xenosaga 1's pretty reasonable. I buy that, no problem. Xenosaga 2, it's a bit expensive. It's not so bad. But okay, fine. I'll buy that. And then Xenosaga 3 required me to drink an entire box of wine. And then I was like, yeah, okay, I'll put this shit down on a credit card, because it is like... Yes, Kevin?
Have you played any of the games
No.
before you bought this expensive third installment?
No. I bought them all the same night. Xenosaga 3 is up there, man. It's like $200, $300. So imagine my surprise when I get it in the mail and the box art is in Japanese and the manual is in Japanese and the game disc is in Japanese. And I'm about to return this bitch. I'm about to demand a refund. And I go and I check the listing and it says, this is the Japanese copy. And I just said, add it to my cart, buy it. It was completely my fault. To this day, I still have the Japanese copy. I've bootlegged the English, and at some point, I'll play it. And at some point, I'll play my bootlegged English copy. I am not buying that game again.
Good to know. But you know what game you did buy? And I bought Trails in the Sky SC.
I need to send you to a workshop on transitions. That was awful.
No. Because here's why it was great. It's abrupt, enduring, just like the end of FC. It's a thematic resonance. And in SC, which I feel is a bit unusual for sequels, there's like no time, Colin, between FC and SC.
Skip. No, it's true.
It takes a couple hours at most.
It's literally the next day. Estelle went to sleep. Or rather, was knocked out, and she got up.
Yeah, she gets knocked out, FC, wakes up, SC. And what does she do, Colin, when she gets up?
I mean, her first act is to look for Joshua. I mean, at first she's confused as to why she's in Joshua's room, finds the harmonica, and realization starts to come to her. Hey, you really got to feel bad for this girl, and you're going to feel bad for like the first half of the prologue because it's some heartbreaking stuff. But she runs out trying to find where the love of her life had gone.
And then she sees the other, not the love of her life, but one of the unflinching, unmoving poles that has grounded her existence up until a month or 6 weeks ago. She goes to Cassius, tells him what happened. He knows. And says that he knew something like this was going to happen. And Colin, what Estelle feels towards Cassius is what I felt towards Cassius. She's furious. I'm furious. She's so clinical. He's so calm and collected. It's not like he's really expressing his son just did something like this to his daughter and then vanished.
So I'm going to defend Cassius here a little bit. Like, I agree with you that the game thinks that he is a miserable son of a dog, as Shara says. I agree with you that Estelle is not happy. However, take it from the perspective of the top racer in the borough who knows about the existence of Ourbouros, who knows, or at least says that Ourbouros is an evil organization. They have dastardly plans. They're a secret organization. Nobody knows about them. Eventually, it seems like everybody fucking knows about them, but that's a couple of games later. But with Cassius, he's in that privileged position. And then he's attacked by this kid who clearly is from Ourbouros. He knows that. Cassius has known that since the beginning. And you even get a little bit of an oblique reference to it in the very beginning of FC when Cassius and Joshua talk out on the deck before Cassius leaves. So this has been there from the beginning. And Cassius decides he's going to have some mercy and take this kid in. You don't do that with the knowledge that he has and think this is going to last forever. He had to have the strength of conscience to be prepared for this eventuality. I agree he's insensitive to Estelle, but from his position as a man and from his position as a leading bracer and the head of the army, it's a perfectly rational position to take.
I get that. I really do. I guess my issue is more his demeanor. It's detached. Like he's not allowing himself to feel. And he's being Cassius the bracer, Cassius the liberal operative. Not so much being Cassius the father to Joshua and to Estelle.
I agree with you on that. One could wonder if that's not a defense mechanism, because this is Cassius's adopted son. He clearly loved Joshua very much. And one of the ways that I think men commonly defend themselves against their emotions like this is to take on a cold exterior and to rationalize it and to act like, okay, I'm in control now.
Yes, but we have seen Cassius in FC being pretty in tune with his emotions, not afraid to tell his children he loves them, to tease and so forth.
Absolutely. But I don't think that that has any bearing on the current situation.
But what I'm saying is he is pretty in touch with his emotions, generally speaking. It's not like this cold, almost indifferent facade is something normal.
Yeah, but
to him.
I don't think that putting on a cold facade in the sign of a hard situation necessarily means that you're out of touch with your emotions. You can still be roiling on the inside and be aware of that, but knowing that you have to comport yourself in a way in public.
Yes. Well, I would say then, but not really in public. And the impression he's giving his only audience, his daughter, is that he doesn't care. And she's already in a very fragile emotional state.
I see your point, and I think Cassius sees your point too because of how he responds later in the prologue. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying I think I can understand a little bit where Cassius is coming from.
I do. And I also lean more towards Estelle and just her righteous indignation and her pain. He says, don't go after Joshua. Don't go after the society. It's a lost cause, almost. And then she leaves. She's heartbroken. She's suffering. And Shira comes. And Shira is not too impressed with Cassius either.
No. But the way that she phrases it is interesting. No, she basically states, I respect you a lot. You've helped me out so much. And I see where you're coming from. But as a woman, you and Joshua are the most wretched, miserable sons of dogs that she's ever seen.
I don't want to read too much into this, but so Shira is coded as vaguely Middle Eastern, something of that nature. Yeah.
I would say now explicitly Middle Eastern because I've been playing Kuro no Kiseki, and the region of people that look a lot like her is literally called the Middle East.
Yeah, so that's how she's coded. And son of a dog in Mediterranean, East Mediterranean, Levantine cultures is a lot more of a sharp insult, almost a curse, profanity, than the lighthearted, neutral-ish, maybe comedic we would give it. So I have no idea if I'm just going out too far on a branch. But if Shira was letting like this expression suggest she was a lot less pleased with Cassius than might be the initial reading, I don't know.
I mean, I didn't think of that as being a particular. I mean, like it's a nasty phrase, even in English. I hadn't thought of it in terms of severity from the Mediterranean lifestyle. I know a lot of Italians, like a lot of Italians. I think the next time I see one, I'm going to call him the son of a dog and see what he says to me.
Yeah. And then we meet an even worse son of a dog.
Yeah, I know. Everybody with this guy's name, I don't like.
Bad news. It's Kevin Graham, the priest. He is weird. Like I was messaging you, like this guy, total creepo.
Yes, you were. I like Kevin, but I've also played 2 games in which he is in, and I know about him. I agree. He comes off as a lecher. He comes off as like the hot Catholic priest in the first couple of seasons of The Sopranos, trying to bang Carmela Bang. In any case, in this scene, I think is really important to show.
Wait, can you wind up? How did we get to this scene exactly? Where are we?
Yeah, so Estelle, you can see her kind of do a little bit of a mental breakdown, a little bit, where she's dealing with the fact that Joshua has run off. And then she runs into some guards that asks her why she's running outside in the rain. And he says something, I forget what, but she comes to the idea that Joshua simply went home. He went back home. And if Estelle goes back home, she'll find Joshua. So she gets on an airship back to Roland. And on that airship from Grancel to Roland is our itinerant priest, Kevin Graham.
And then she's crying.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about. It's not just that she's crying. In the beginning of the scene, she's holding it in. She's really holding it in. And she's talking to this priest. They're having a little bit of a banter. And then she just lets it go. It's not written as like Estelle cries. It's written out in capital letters, bold, wah, wah, wah. And I'm going to be just a little bit personal for a second. The first time that I played this, it was a little bit far away from a hard breakup that I had, but the breakup was still very fresh in my mind and still very, very emotionally poignant to me. And I instantly identified with Estelle in this moment because that right there is the depth of human emotion. When your heart just gets broken and you have nothing else and all you can do is scream. And the fact that Falcom writes her in this way, I think is really brave because it shows not just that she has emotion, but that she's kind of broken, that she's kind of weak in that moment. And a lot of the time, I feel like JRPGs ignore that side, particularly in JRPG characters, because in women JRPG characters, because they think that makes the woman look weak. But Falcom recognizes that we already know Estelle is strong, and therefore we can see her be vulnerable, we can see her be weak, and respect her as a person for it.
Colin, is Estelle strong, do you think, because she only hits things with the staff, big physical fighter, lots of quips, snarky, himbo, kind of dumb energy? Or is she strong because she's all of these things, yes, but also in touch with her emotions, with her femininity, with her complex feelings towards Joshua?
I think that the answer depends on what we're referring to when we say strong female character, particularly the word strong. No matter what, Estelle's a female character. A strong female character can either be a female character written strongly or a female character who is strong internally. Estelle is both of these things. The writing behind her is incredible because of the way that the writers are able to really flesh out her personality and show all of the details, show her tackling with her emotions, show her having moments of vulnerability, but also moments of stubbornness and moments of kindness and moments of goodwill and moments of altruism. That makes her a strongly written character, but the fact that she is such a complete person and is able to face arduous situations while not running away from the inherent realities of being a human being makes her a strong female character, if that makes sense.
And Colin, I would say there's a third definition of strong female character. And I would use it in a kind of derogatory manner in which we really saw it coming to the high point 90s and 2000s of a stoic, almost emotionless female character who was written to be hyper-specialized, hyper-skilled at a usually male-dominated physical kind of work, fighting, soldier, spy, whatever. And that's all their personality. And oftentimes the male protagonist love interest is better than them at it. So I think like this, all capital letters, strong female character has a kind of a one-dimensional side. But Falcom understands strength is multi-dimensional. It's inner and outer. It's emotional and social and physical and so much more than just be strong, hit stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before about how I think a lot of JRPGs have this idea of the strong female character that, in my opinion, isn't really strong. It's just a flat character that's made to make young teenagers think that they are strong. I mean, we have to, look at our ages. These were the strong female characters we grew up with in video games. And we did not realize they were not strong right away.
Yeah, and as we're out of our teens, for a while now.
Oh my God, my students.
So Estelle goes to her home. She looks in each room. The facade of certainty she has. Joshua's here. The next room. You can see it slowly drain away as she comes to grapple with the cold, harsh truth of reality. And then who comes in but Cassius and Shira? And here's a good glimpse that Kevin is more than he seems. He contacted them at the Roland's Guild branch, knew how to do it, knew where to go, knew what to say to get them to listen, and they caught a freighter to Roland and they meet up with Estelle in the kitchen, and Cassius is very different here than in the palace in the capital. What does he say, Colin, about Estelle and her quest?
I mean, at this point, we have a discussion in which Cassius comes to terms with the fact that his daughter is a grown woman. And not only is a grown woman, but is a strong woman who is able to make her own decisions, who has decided to fight to go grab Joshua and find him and bring him back home. And instead of trying to stop her, as he did before, and I would say to some extent wisely, instead decides if this is what Estelle wants to do, he needs to support her, which he does by sending her off to Lehman headquarters for training, which we'll talk about in a bit. But it's a turning point in their relationship. I think every son or daughter has this with their parents, or at least they should, where their parents recognize them as adults, recognize that they're not in charge of their lives anymore. And this is that moment for Estelle and Cassius.
He calls her an independent woman.
Yes, which means that when she grocery shops, there's wine and cat litter.
She can make her own decisions. Some of them he may not necessarily think is the best, may not agree with 100%, but if she's determined, then what he wants to do, what he sees as his responsibility is help her succeed at her goal. So Cassius calls her an independent woman, and he knows that the time of him telling her, ordering her what to do, that's gone. He can suggest, he can advise, but she has a goal. He may not agree with it, but his job is to help her succeed as best he can, and the consequences come what may. He'll be with her in success. He'll console her if it's failure. And how does Cassius show what an independent woman, what an adult Estelle is? He sends her to summer camp.
Well, yeah, I guess it's like a month, right? A little bit away from home. You go to a lodge, you have some activities. And in all seriousness, they go to guild headquarters in Lehman State, which we haven't really explored in any of the games, to be honest. This is really the only time that we're in Lehman State, but the bits that I've been able to pick up is that Lehman State, it's a small state, but it's an independent state. It's probably able to keep its independence because the guild's headquartered there. And as like the international institution par excellence, that's not the church, they need a place to headquarter themselves. So this is a training ground where not junior bracers, but like senior bracers that want to go through a rigorous training course and better themselves will go. And so Estelle goes there, and so does Anelace, who was a bracer from the Grand Cell branch that we had met last game. And I know that Kevin has some things to say about Anelace's view of the legal system.
She is a perfect character. She is a perfect unit. Cuteness is justice. That's the law. Yeah, I agree 100,000% that if you're good and handsome, you are an ontologically good person. Ugly people are by definition evil.
Kevin, I like to think of me as a good person. I like to think of you as a good person. Why are you insulting us like this?
I'm more of a chaotic than good.
Yeah, fair. Look, Anelace is... I'm not going to say she's a bad character. I'm saying that you spent 2 hours with her. She's not perfect. Her defining trait is that she's good friends with Estelle. She swings a sword, and she likes cute shit. That's not a compelling character to me.
Okay, she's a great DPS. Her strength is really great.
She's fine. And I say this with all due respect, but it's difficult to evaluate her because she's the only other party member that you got. She's literally another beat stick. And she has some good S-crafts, don't get me wrong. One thing that we'll find out later is that she has a very specialized fighting style that we see a lot throughout the games. There's some depth to her character, don't get me wrong. But she's there as the prologue unit. She's useful in the fact that she's a body that can take hits and do hits. But I don't see her as amazing.
Okay, Colin, you're going to get a plushie stuffed toy shoved right up your ass.
Do you even know my address to send me one?
Well, okay. I mean, But think of it like this. She's a foil to Estelle, in all seriousness. She's happy, go lucky, things are going pretty good for her. I mean, she's 18, older than Estelle, but you wouldn't think of it. Estelle is moody, gloomy. She's seen a lot. She's had a lot done to her. She's done a lot. They are divergent paths. They work off of each other as characters.
I would agree that I think that a deepening of relationship with somebody like Anelace is exactly what Estelle needs to kind of lift herself back up from the morose of depression that she was under.
And it's a relationship that she has with Anelace without Joshua being involved.
Yeah. One could easily say that this is the first independent friendship she's developed.
I mean, Joshua and Estelle are not as codependent as Sam and Dean Winchester, but Estelle, in ways good and bad, she gets to stand alone this chapter, discover who she is without Joshua. In some ways, that is attacking her to the core of her being. It's scary, but in other ways, she's really growing in the sun.
But on top of that, what I think is notable about that is that she is the same person. You know,
Yes.
she wasn't putting on an act just to please the guy that she liked. This is who
No.
Estelle is. She had some trip ups, don't get me wrong, and she had some areas where she's matured or changed a little bit, but the core of Estelle is still the headstrong, good-hearted person who cares about justice and who cares about her friends.
Who runs into danger to save other people.
Precisely. And we're going to talk about what danger they might be in. But before we get to that, I do want to make the point that while FC and SC were developed initially as the same game, they clearly made some improvements to the engine with this game. And you see that nowhere better than during the fight scene between Estelle and Anelace. These sprites are jumping around, they're swinging weapons. You see an actual fight happen. Which you didn't really see in FC. And to me, this is where the sprites in Trails really start to become expressive.
I think the closest comparison would be the fight between Agate and Lieutenant Lorence.
That's true. That's true.
And it was just jumping. Didn't see hardly any weapons, none of this movement, none of the color. It was mostly jumping, and it was kind of funny, to be honest.
It was jumping. There might have been like a swing or two, but with this, you see tactics and it's interspersed with dialogue. You see how the fight progresses. And what I like about it is that it doesn't appear like it demands anything extra of hardware. It's literally just better artistic vision, better programming.
Yeah. And that's not the only change that was made to the game system.
No.
One, we get new courts, entirely new courts, and orbment. What we had previous game, none of it carries over. There's a story reason. New model, it's top of the line, it just came out, and yet somehow every single dealer in the entire place we're going to go, I bet we'll be able to craft this new type of courts within 5 weeks, but moving on beyond that.
Well, let's talk about what this new orbment is, and then talk about maybe how it's not the best designed thing. So there are two changes to this. The first is there's a new slot, bully for us. So you have, I don't remember if it was 6 or 7 quartz we have now. I think it maybe is 7. But the other additional feature is that you're able to use Sepith to upgrade your slots. And to me, this is almost as if a company sold you an incomplete product and then told you to give them more money to increase it, aka Electronic Arts.
Not only that, Colin, this is a company making products presumably to be used in life or death situations.
Yeah, at the very least, they know that it's used. It's like if you bought a sword, and in order to really defend yourself, you had to buy the second half of the sword.
Sorry, Timmy, your dad died because he couldn't be bothered to upgrade his orbment slot.
And like, I understand this from a gameplay perspective. It allows you to have all of your slots unlocked, and therefore you're using a full set of quartz, which makes the gameplay feel a lot better because you have more access to arts, you have more customizability over your specs, but it also gives you a place to put your Sepith. It gives you a reward for upgrading your slots, by increasing your EP, by allowing you to equip more powerful quartz. I think that as a gameplay system that works. I think it's very good in that way. I'm just saying that the story justification on the upgrading part is bizarre.
You get to see the best thing in an RPG. Numbers go up.
Bro, I fucking love it when numbers go up. When numbers go down, I'm big sad.
Then we have this second new thing. Chain crafts. Not Hobby Lobby, but
We're not talking about Michaels over here. We're talking about S-Crafts.
it's when two characters, if the enemy is in the range of them both, they can link the craft using CP for both characters to do a, joint linked attack. With one prologue chapter's worth, I say it's cool. Haven't had much exposure to it, to be honest.
So I've played all of FC, and as far as I can remember, the only time I used chain crafts were in the prologue. Now, look, I've also known that chain crafts do have a reputation for being really good, or at least I'm sure I've seen that someplace. I didn't find them ever necessary to use them, and to me, it feels bad to use them because you are expending the same amount of CP for each character. Even when it's not the other character's turn to go, and the attacks didn't really seem to have as much of an impact as I would have liked. So that's why I didn't use them. However, I would like to make it a point to use them a little bit more this time around, because I didn't feel the need to use them, I never used them. They might be fantastic later on in the game, and I just don't know.
So, question for you, Colin. If you don't feel the need to use a new game mechanic, combat mechanic, what does that say about how it was introduced, about the effectiveness or whatever? Is that a mistake or a sign on the developer's part? Or is it more on the player? What do you think?
I mean, this is something that we talked about a couple of sidebar episodes ago, I think. And Falcon kind of has a problem with this. For example, I didn't tinker around with the Orbman system that much in the last game. And we'll see how much I tinker around with it in this game, but that is a system that I didn't really have to engage with that much. Same with games like E's Memories of Celceta, where they have a very in-depth armor and weapon upgrading system that I did not engage with, because you can engage with it and then you buy a new weapon and you buy a new piece of armor and you feel like, well, if I'm just going to get this new shit in a couple of hours anyway, why am I going to invest these resources in upgrading it? Yeah. But when I talked to people about that, what they told me was this system is necessary to engage with if you're playing on hard, if you're playing on a harder difficulty. On normal, you don't really have to. And we know from your own experience that the difficulty you set combat at in these games impacts how you play them. And I think that element of it is a strength, because it means that the difficulty is not just, I need to hit the enemies more. You actually have to think through the systems more. Yes. But most people are going to play on normal because most people play a game one time, and most people play default difficulty that it says, this is the default difficulty, you should play on this one. And then we get into a debate as to how difficult a normal mode should be tuned. And I think that in general, Falcom could stand to tune their normal modes a little bit harder. That being said, not an SC. SC is probably the hardest game in the series.
A lot of people have said that, and it's so weird to think of as this game and not any of the other 9, 10, 11 installments.
Well, I don't know how Kuro no Kiseki is considered difficulty-wise. I'll say playing it does strike me as a bit more difficult than the Cold Steel games and Hajimari. So that could be a new rival for SC in that. But certainly SC is harder than FC, harder than Trails the Third, harder than both Crossbow games.
I want to say, I just love how it's FC, SC, then the Third.
Yeah, I know, right? They didn't try to do TC. They're like, yeah, it's the Third.
And then so Anelace and Estelle get woken up in the night. Kurt is the bracelet assigned to them at the lodge. Jaegers are attacking.
Yes.
They kidnap Kurt. They gas Joshua and they cast Estelle and Anelace, and eventually we learn this was a false flag operation, that it's the bracers designing a sudden terrorist attack to test how can they react without equipment, how can they react going to a military base, thinking up a rescue plan, so on and so forth.
Well, to be fair here, the false flag attack you find out at the end.
Yes.
For the whole dungeon area, for the whole being attacked, it looks really real.
I want to say two things. One, I think it really strongly suggests that bracers, maybe by code, should not use lethal force even when attacking Jaegers, who are kind of said to be the thematic worst enemies. Because otherwise, here's my reasoning, why would Kurt and the others place themselves in a situation where Estelle and Anelace could go for the killing blow? But while this raises another question, staff, I get it. Don't go for killing blow. Sword, bit harder, but also it's possible. If you have a gun, like are orbital bullets non-lethal or whatever, but who knows? Or the cannon?
I think with the cannon and the gun, you just have to take that as an abstraction. You just have to take that as a trope that you can get shot in the face and somehow survive. That being said, I don't know if I agree with your reading that this says that bracers must be non-lethal. Which doesn't say that they aren't non-lethal, because generally speaking, they are. The only people that we've killed so far as bracers are wild animals doing extermination requests. We haven't killed any people on purpose, or even by accident, as far as I can remember yet. That being said, there's a very simple reason as to why Karna and Kurt and the other guy whose name I don't remember, Grant, would attack Estelle and Anelace and not fear for their lives, which is they're not junior bracers, but they're close to it. These are much higher ranked. I mean, Kurt seems to be in charge of the whole training thing. Like, he's a senior ass bracer. They are better. The fact that we can beat them means that they have brought their skill down, not that we've actually beaten them.
All it takes is an errant blow or a parry.
But one of the people we're fighting has a gun. So if we're going to say all it takes is an errant blow, it's going to be Karna shooting Estelle, not Estelle hitting her in the chest with a staff.
Or, say a parry by Anelace, and that blade is now through Kurt's, eye socket. I mean, it just seems like it would be that variable if bracers using lethal force was something against Jaegers, especially, that was not uncommon. I feel like they wouldn't have done it. I don't know. It just doesn't seem the same.
I think that your point applies to like literally the training program itself. When Estelle and Anelace are fighting, all it takes is an errant blow. I mean, a sword is a lethal weapon. All she had to do was strike her in the eye, and oops, there she's blind. But that doesn't seem to be a concern either.
Question for you. Was Richard and Lorence and Amalthea trying to kill the heroes last game?
I think Amalthea, definitely. Richard, probably. Lorence, no. And the reason why is because, as we know from your experience, is that you can lose. And he still fucks off.
It's a pretty standard dungeon. I don't think there's much need to go into detail.
So there's one innovation that it makes that we'll see again, and I think is actually kind of interesting, which is you enter into a dark room, and until you can grab some goggles, your character is blinded and you can't really hit anything. And that is important because it's showing environmental changes that you have to respond to on the fly while you're in a dungeon. And it's one of those things that if they do more of it are going to make dungeons a lot more interesting. Whereas before they were very rote and boring.
Yeah, that's true. So that was good to see. It was annoying in the dark going to see, but overall I think it's good.
I have a story about this. It's not really spoilery, but it is about a different game. I was playing Trails the Third the first time a couple of years ago, and basically there's an achievement for you to kill 500 different enemies, like 500 battle encounters, or to run from 500 encounters, but all of this has to be done in a row. And I decided I was just going to make sure that I fought every encounter in order to get this achievement, because you get something in the game as well for it. And then I entered one of these dungeons with the darkness, and I couldn't hit anything. I didn't have any goggles. The only way that I could go get goggles would be to run away and go grab the goggles. So I had to. None of my S-crafts would hit. None of my arts would hit. I was blinded completely, and I didn't get the achievement. And so when we play Trails the Third next time, I'm going to make sure that something happened. Maybe I'll run 500 times. I don't know. But that I had flashbacks to that, which is why I do to just run away.
So that's the end of the gameplay section.
Yes, but we have a little bit of a narrative end to it that sheds a little bit more light on what's going on.
First, we go with the villains. We see Campanella and Blade Lord talking at first, and Campanella is the one who looks like a homicidal 12-year-old. And you know what, Colin? He may fucking be, because Ourbouros employs homicidal 11-year-olds. So
that's true. I can tell you Campanella is not 12. I don't know how old he is. It is older than 12. It is older than a lot of people.
Good to know.
Whereas, so he's interesting. He's number 0 enforcer. He's the observer. Campanella seems to have a bit of a special place, like the direct envoy of the Grand Master, versus all of the other enforcers that really seem to have their own volition.
Enforcers, that's what they're called.
There's 2 ranks. There's enforcer and anguis. Weissman is an anguis.
Was it Sharon in Trails of Cold Steel? She's the dominatrix.
Yep.
Sex fiend.
Yep.
Wasn't she an enforcer?
Yes.
So she was part of Ourbouros.
Yes.
Do we see her?
Not directly.
Do we see a random character in the game later says, hey, remember that person? Totally Sharon.
Not in SC, but yes.
Do we see any BDSM themed dungeons?
Get back to me on that. I don't remember. But so we
that's
have
interesting. That's interesting.
We have Campanella, and you call him Blade Lord, but eagle-eyed players will recognize this man as Lorence. Will recognize this as the gray-haired guy that Joshua knows. That is clearly somebody related to Joshua, as revealed by that conversation with Weissman.
I thought Lorence was the person.
This is Lorence. Trust me, this is Lorence.
It said Blade Lord.
That's his title.
That's an edgelord title. That is the title
yes, it
of a
is.
15-year-old.
It absolutely is. And he probably dreamed of it when he was 15. But it's Lorence.
Then we see Blue Balls.
No, we do not. By Blue Balls, you mean Blue Blanc, who has not appeared yet. He is mentioned by Lorence. It's Weissman who comes out and talks.
Oh, man, I'm a goldfish.
Man, we haven't played FC in a month, and you've forgotten everything.
I mean, I played this prologue on Friday, and I've forgotten everything.
We need to take better notes.
And then they talk about, going back to the more serious side, the conspiracy in Ourbouros is not broken.
Correct.
Their plans, Richard was the cat's paw. That's clear now.
Yes, that was part of their plan, but part of their plan was for Richard to fail. Weissman still seems to think that he has a grip on the situation.
And that raises an interesting open-ended question, Colin, about plans and schemers. So it's often like the prototypical master schemer, someone who's always in the shadows, always 10 steps ahead. Would it have been better, do you think, if they portrayed, to me, I think any plan with more than 4 complex steps is a wish more than a plan. And the best manipulators, I think, are those who have goals and they react and nudge events as they happen more. I like it better more than someone controlling everything that's going on in the shadows, if that makes sense.
I hear you, and I'm not even going to say that that's not what they're doing. But I think that if you're going to manipulate things from the shadow, you need an end goal.
Yeah,
And that end goal is what Weissman is aiming at, whatever it is.
that's good. Having an end goal and reacting and acting to get an end goal is good.
Yes.
Less convincing is, oh, this was all part of the plan I first, devised 15 years ago, and everything that's happened has been unknowingly falling into my clutches. And that's like, come on, buddy.
Yeah, no, it's a trope. And it's not completely absent from this series. Definitely not. I'll be curious to see, once you get to the end of this game, how you judge Weissman. Is it part of this trope? Is it something a bit more? I'll be curious to see what you think.
Are you going to deny his tenure review?
I have a feeling that he might not actually be employed by a university.
He's an underemployed PhD. I love him now.
Yeah, all of a sudden he's one of us.
Move on to Joshua at a gravesite, the ruined village of Hamel.
Yes.
With Josette, his soon-to-be lover.
That is Kevin's prediction.
And
I am neither confirming nor denying.
They're at Karin's grave. And this is Hamel village. He's laying a flower, and he knows who Karin is. So I think she's Joshua's sister. We know he has one, because in the end of FC, he talks to Weissman saying something about his sister and
Loewe, if I'm guessing, because German stuff.
And Loewe may be his brother, because Loewe is from there, or family there.
Well,
like,
what we know
is connected.
What we know, this is the evidence, we need to be precise, is that at the end of the fight with Estelle and Shara and Chloe in front of the Queen, Lorence, aka Loewe, does mention Hamel and says, he calls it the tragedy of Hamel, and kind of yells at the Queen about it, and then leaves. That's the evidence that we have.
There's more, though.
Okay, well, what more do we have? I guess there's some stuff out of the conversation with Weissman that you have.
Yeah. Joshua says, is this my punishment? My sister and Loewe. So, he knows Loewe.
Yeah.
Maybe a brother, because we also see that, I guess what do you call it, the image, the photograph, the drawing, when Estelle is listening to Joshua's tale. Loewe, who's also Lorence, who's also Blade Lord.
You definitely see a guy who looks just like that guy. So, clearly they are connected.
Giving Joshua to the magician.
Selling Joshua to the magician. we just see some casual child slavery, some casual child trafficking in this game.
So Loewe is from there, and Hamel is destroyed.
Yes.
So my sister and Loewe, these are either he's the brother, or very close friends. Because the way it's these two are given together, they're very close emotional bonds with Joshua.
It's clear, no matter what, right, that Joshua knows who she is, and it's very important to him, which is why he goes to her grave right after he realizes his true past. That is what I can say. Other than that, I neither confirm nor deny.
So I think Karin's the sister, and she dead. She dead.
Dude, she's in a grave like that. I don't have to confirm that.
Yeah, and then Loewe's the brother, who is also part of Ourbouros, but then why would he give? Maybe they both gave each other. They both joined with the magician. But it seems that Joshua was alone as the Black Fang. So I don't know. Maybe he was a later recruit.
Let me massage some stuff. Who do you think that magician was?
Weissman.
Yeah.
Weissman.
Yeah. And so we know Weissman is part of Ourbouros, and Joshua was an enforcer, and so is Lorence.
Oh, so maybe there's a much simpler explanation than what I was thinking of. Okay. And then Hamel was destroyed. And it's about the war. Maybe Liberal destroyed it in the war, and maybe they did it before the war. Why did the war happen? We know the general cause, but what was the immediate spark? Maybe some false flag operation, like how World War II began? I don't know, but we're meant to think that liberal, the stay, and the Ourbouros, there's some connection with why Hamel was destroyed. But I wonder why Hamel specifically, why not another village?
The only thing that I can bring up before I have to say, I either confirm nor deny, is that at one point Joshua mentions that he's actually from Erebonia, and Hamel is in Erebonia.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay.
But that's it. After that, you will find out. I can tell you, you will find out. But I ain't
So
saying
I
shit.
bet maybe radical liberal army units did it, and that gave Erebonia the pretext to invade. But then liberal is like, we have to squash this, because otherwise this goes from a defense of gallant little liberal to we just slaughtered a village in cold blood, which would not make them look like the good guys.
No, it wouldn't. But
Question.
yeah.
Can you tell me, does Cassius know what's going on about Hamel? About Hamel?
Yeah.
And Joshua's parents, are they important? Is he like hidden
This is
nobility?
look, Kevin. That's
he
not a
king?
question I'm going to answer.
Okay. Before we move on, I want to say I hope we never see them. Do you know why, Colin?
Why?
They don't matter. It would defeat his arc, his narrative. His dad is Cassius. His sister, girlfriend, wife, is Estelle. Like, if they have, by the way, you're the secret heir, that would just ruin the bond, the life he's made, the family he's found.
I hear you. But the nature of this program means I can neither confirm nor deny. Kevin, how do you feel about this prologue? Is it better than the last prologue?
Yes. Here's why. In brief, we get segmented, lots of dialogue, text, story, gameplay, and then that repeats. And I liked it better than lots of one, then lots of the other.
So I don't necessarily mind big visual novel stuff and then gameplay. And I would actually argue against you. That's kind of what we get. But what I like about this prologue more is that we already have context. We already have a connection to these characters. The prologue in FC is really meant to introduce us to Joshua and Estelle, right? It's meant to introduce us to this world. With this prologue, we already know this world. We already know these characters. We want to know what Estelle is going to do next. And we don't have to wait. It happens immediately. And that's an automatic hook. You know, you don't have to wait for Cassius to disappear to be hooked into the narrative like you do with FC Prologue. The hook is from the beginning. You're already in it. And then the entire time, we're already thinking in terms of character development. We're already thinking in terms of world building in a way that is more fulfilling to FC. It's not to denigrate FC. FC is necessary to make this happen. But the sequel is better than this prologue in SC is better than the prologue in FC because of the work that FC did.
Yeah, we stand on the shoulder of giants.
Indeed.
That's how we see so far.
So before we end this episode, we wanted to do something a little bit different because there's one really significant thing about FC that we hadn't really talked about yet, which is the book series. We've alluded to it from time to time. And we've kind of described how it's bullshit, how to find them. Therefore, we weren't going to engage with them. But and
it's bullshit. What you do with them? Total fucking bullshit.
Yeah. So to just go over that real quickly, there are 12 chapters. There's 11 and then a finale of the Carnelia book series. And if you find them all, you can talk to a random NPC in Grand Cell and get one of the best weapons in the game. As in, I believe there are 2 best weapons in the game, and you get to pick one of them. Of course, nothing about the game tells you about that at all. And in fact, it is very possible to go through the whole game without getting into the system at all. And I'm not going to knock the game entirely for that. I do think that it's one of those things that's really rewarding players for talking to all NPCs, for exploring. It's cool that something that's so interesting for the world building is also turned into a player power advantage. I'm not going to denigrate this completely.
some of these availabilities are insane.
I
Like
agree.
after you talk to Alicia, the game wants you to stay in the keep. But then you have to go out and then go talk to a random guard outside to
I'm
get
not
one of the last chapters.
I'm not defending that choice. The system as a whole, I think, can be a good idea, but not the best, well thought out individual system. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because if you think about it, what this is, it's a short story about the world of Zemuria, published in the world of Zemuria. So yesterday, I said, Kevin, you have to read this story. And I read it as well. And so I wanted to just have a little brief chat about it. How do you think about it as a short story? Do you find it compelling? What does it help with our world building? Why do you think that they put this story in the game?
I thought it was a good short story. I was engaged with this as a work of fiction. Beginning, middle, end. Good, tight plot, characters who change. It had action. I thought it was good. The story about Toby and Carnelia, I thought it was really good. We'll talk more about that. But one thing I want to bring up real quick about how orb and orbaments are used and portrayed. I thought it was really interesting. It's called orbal magic.
Mhm.
But we've seen it so much as a precise science. And here the usage is like it's magic, it's magical. And seeing uses described makes it sound like a wizard casting spells, almost. And
Hold
EP
on.
does exist.
What? Repeat what you said?
EP of a sort does exist.
Yes, it does. I would
We
point
talked
out.
about this.
I would point out in the very beginning of FC, they do define an ornament as an object that allows you to use magic.
Oh, fuck off. Damn it! I had this whole theory about different, Erebonia, more conservative, they'd be more magical, while Liberal is more scientific, more industrial. God damn it.
Yeah, I love the theory, but as a famous lawyer once said, you have a great theory, but you don't have the evidence.
I refuse to let reality impart my theory.
You are an academic.
Oh,
All right, so other
fine
than
then.
the orbal magic thing, what other stuff do we learn? I don't want to talk myself about this because I know a lot more context and I don't want to give anything away. But what did you learn from this?
I don't want to shock our listeners, Colin, but I'm going to say something bold and dramatic. Turns out the Catholic Church analog in a JRPG fantasy game has a secret side to it.
Why don't you expand on that?
Well, they have essentially enforcers, anti-assassins. The hierarchy is traffics in artifacts, these ancient ornaments from past civilizations. The cardinal, I think he's the head of like the Erebonian church. He's in on it.
I don't remember the head of the Erebonian church being a part of the story.
They mentioned the cardinal with the artifact in the cathedral.
Okay, yes, I would say that we already know from FC that all artifacts are supposed to be under control of the Church of Idios. So it would make sense for the bishop of the church to seize control of it.
Okay, so it's not like the hidden side, the hidden society of like
No, the bishops and the cardinals are not the hidden society. That's not to say that Carnelia is not an interesting character in that regard.
Because there's no Kyrie Cotamine, never mind that. But no, Carnelia, she's someone who she seems to like combat.
Yeah, I mean, she's defined as a Jaeger in a previous life in that work, I think.
And this purity in combat, and she's taking it, she's channeling this for different goals, different purposes, but Colin, she fights to kill.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the first time we've seen this anywhere in the series so far. Someone on screen, as it were, killing. And it's not like, oh, did she kill? Did she not?
No,
it is
she
clear.
killed.
Yes.
And by the way, so did Toby. When Toby's defending himself, he shoots a bitch like right in the chest with a fireball.
And That's not like, oh my God, I have to agonize. It's like, maybe this sucks, but you have to do what you have to do.
Yeah,
That's combat. That's a really cool, different perspective compared to Joshua and Estelle.
absolutely. And I think it's noteworthy that neither of them are bracers. Toby then says at the end of the book that he has become one, but during the dramatic narrative of the book, he is not one.
He's a smuggler. He's a thief.
Yeah.
I like seeing the underside in more explicit terms beyond criminals you beat up. But more, this is a hidden war of knives in the shadows against those who slither in the dark.
I feel like Slither in the Dark is a reference to something that I should know, and I don't remember what you're talking about.
3 houses, Colin.
Damn it! It would not be a Trails in the Pod episode if Kevin did not talk about 3 houses.
Edelgard supremacy all the way.
All right, so let's wrap this up. Kevin, you've been throwing this idea at me for a while, in that at the end of an episode, we identify like the most important thing or person or theme or event in a thing, and you want to call it the S rank bracer. Do you want to talk more about what I'm talking about?
So, Harry Potter podcast. Who won the House Cup in the episode that week? Game of Thrones podcast. Who sat the Iron Throne? Trails podcast. Who is the S rank bracer? The defining person, place, theme, or idea that animates the episode. What you think? So, for the prologue of SC, for me, the S rank bracer is standing alone. Estelle has to stand alone. It's good. And it's bad. She grows as an independent person beyond Joshua, but also Joshua was taken from her life in a, I think, kind of cruel way, and it's painful, but she grows from it. And so I want to hear, Colin, what do you think as the defining person, place, idea? What's the S rank bracer? And the audience, what do you think animates this chapter or the game or something along that nature?
Yeah, so as I was driving home, I Facebook messaged you my answer, which is somewhat similar to yours, but I do think different in connotation and tone. To me, the S rank bracer of the prologue is the concept of perseverance and endurance, because Estelle does receive this life-changing tragedy, this absolutely heart-wrenching loss in her life that even a few years later, being far removed from my own personal connection to it, still brings tears to my eyes when I read that. But instead of giving in to everything, she decides to move on. Yes, initially she has her flight of fancy. Oh yes, Joshua is going home. I need to go home too. But once she accepts that, she still decides to press forward. And the reason why I stress the perseverance and endurance aspect, as opposed to the standing alone aspect, is because I do think that her budding relationship with Anelace is an important part of her persevering process. It's not so much that she's standing alone, is that she's standing as her own person with other people. Cassius is there to support her. Shara is there to support her. Anelace is there to support her. I'm sure when she runs into others, they'll support her as well. But the important part is that Estelle doesn't give up, and which is much to be admired.
I get that. I guess I phrase it as standing alone because I see it as equal Janice-like pain, suffering, regression, and growth. She's this anchor. Who am I without Joshua? That's scary. And she's forced to confront that.
Mhm.
And she's unsure, but she also takes it to learn to discover, who am I without Joshua? How do I relate to Anelace without Joshua as a third wheel? So I think it's equal good and bad.
I hear you on that. But loyal listeners, those who tune in every week, thank you for forgiving us for a week break. I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and let us know who you think Yes Rank Bracer is. Is it what I said? Is it what Kevin said? Are we saying the same fucking thing? Very possible.
Is it Anelace? Is it cuteness? That's the S rank racer.
I think it's justice, which apparently is the same thing.
It's a tautology, Colin.
That's the same thing.
Okay. Before we devolve any further, let's wrap it up. I'm Kevin. That's Colin. See you next week.
See you next week. Thanks so much for listening. Have a good night.